All right. Hey, and welcome back to Dash at Night. It's me, your host, Dash. As always, we're going to talk about everything pulp culture from movies, books, video games, news, you name it. We're going to be talking about it. I hope everyone is having a wonderful night. Recovering here in Oklahoma, we've had quite a few tornadoes over the last couple of days. Hopefully, all the weather is out. I am saying an extra prayer for you guys tonight that have been affected, especially down in the Oklahoma City and Choctaw area. I hope everyone is doing well. I know Shawnee was in a bad place as well today. So, again, if you guys are watching, give them a shout out and say, give them some love and wish them well. But before we get going tonight I want to dedicate our show in the memory of Peanut and Fred. Can we give a little love to Peanut and Fred? Uh, Gone before their time. Gone before their time is all I can say. So I appreciate everyone that's coming out tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about uh, bad bad books to movie adaptations, if you will. Now, again, when I do this stuff, it's all subjective for the most part. As you saw at the beginning of the show, the opinions are mine. Mine alone does not reflect anybody else. If I bring up a movie or a show tonight that you guys love, nothing personal. I'm glad that you love it. I'm glad that you keep giving it love and supporting it. Uh, if you guys have followed me at all, anytime at all on at Facebook, you know how I grade my movies, how I grade my books. I grade it on certain things. I'm looking for the how the actors do. I'm looking for how the storyline goes, the cinematography, all that good stuff. I'm looking for. So it's not just based on because this actor was in it and I dislike that actor. It has nothing to do with that. And a majority of tonight's shows that I'm going to be discussing uh, have wonderful actors in them. For the most part, all of the actors were good. It was just either bad storyline, um, you know, bad direction, uh, or maybe it just didn't fit. Maybe it just shouldn't have been brought out in the first place. But that's some of the things we'll be talking about tonight. But this whole topic came up from from a class that I was just in my college. It was in a class, and we got to discussing about what are good and bad movie adaptations. I've done a good movie adaptation. It's on my YouTube. If you're not subscribed, you can go over to YouTube Dash Hooper. In fact, why don't you go over there and do this for me right now? We would appreciate it. It helps me. It helps the family. It helps us big time. And again, you can hit like and share this video if you're on Facebook tonight, where I'm streaming live. You can like and share it to your friends and get the word out. And if you're watching, hit the star button. Give us some stars. Give us some love. Let us know that we're doing a good job here on the show. But all that out of the way, like I said, we're talking about bad movie adaptations. And again, it's subjective. If you like it, great. I'm glad that you like it. Um, there's tons of movies that I like that people just beat me down for liking. So I totally get it. And sometimes movies and shows are not for everybody. But the question I brought up today was why do you think certain people don't like book to movie adaptations? We had a lot of great answers. And there's no right or wrong answer with it. You know, we had some that were based on the characterization, um, and the readers that that read the book and liked the movie or watched the movie. Sometimes it's the characterization that they don't like. Sometimes it's messing up the settings. We've had we're talking about who we portray in our mind when we're reading the book. We have it set in our heads when we read the book who we want in that. And my buddy Dusty brought up uh, the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons. He pictured Tom Selleck in the role instead of Tom Hanks. I pictured Pierce Brosnan. Tom Hanks, in my opinion, did a good job. Some people might not thought he did. There if I'm doing my research today on some of the worst book to movie adaptations, Angels and Demons and Da Vinci Code were at the top of a lot of people's list. I personally like them. So you see what I say? Uh, some people might like it, some people don't. And I totally get that. But for me, what I'm looking for, especially when it comes to movie adaptations of favorite books, do they stick as close as possible to the text given? We've seen uh, sometimes it can work, sometimes it can't. Like Reacher, uh, with Reacher on Amazon, they're taking a couple of books and putting the show together with two different books. The same with Bosch, the same with Tracker. If you're watching Tracker, all great shows based off books, but they're staying true to the character and they're staying true to the storyline for the most part. They'll jiggy jog some up to combine them, but they're staying true. Sometimes they don't do that, and we'll talk about some of those. Like I said, for the most part, all the actors are really good. I haven't seen anybody that's been horribly casted. Um, some might disagree, just like I said. A lot of it, they didn't like Tom Hanks, or they didn't like certain other actors in the role. So that's one of the things I'm looking for: is do they stay true to the character, stay true to the source material? Lord of the Rings by Peter Jackson. To me, one of the best all-time trilogies of all time, if not the best trilogy of all time. Um, he did some adaptation. He didn't take anything away for the most part. He made the Helm's Deep battle a lot longer than it was in the movies than it was in the book. That only added to it. But I feel like if he took something away from that, I think it would have changed the whole dynamic of the movie. He didn't change any of the characters. Gandalf was Gandalf. Frodo was Frodo, exactly like they were in the book. And he followed Tolkien's text. The only thing he really left out was Tom Bombadil, but you can't even. And we'll talk about that here in a minute when I talk about the Rings of Power. The Tom Bombadil is, while in the book as an essential character, he wouldn't have done anything for the movies. I think. Totally get that. And I understand that. I did. I wanted Tom Bombadil in there, but I understood where he came from on that, so it didn't affect the overall viewing pleasure for me. Other things that people have said that make a bad book to movie is the fans. The fans are the worst thing in fandom. Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill kind of he was asked that same question when it came to The Witcher, and he said, and I'm paraphrasing here. I'm not quoting the whole thing. If you want to go see it, I think there's a YouTube video where he's talking and he talks about passion of the fans. And I think you have to take into consideration the passions of the fans. These are IPs. These are existing IPs for some that have been around for years and years and years, decades, some possibly centuries, depending on which book you're talking about. But the passion of those fans is if you have a large fan base and you don't care about that fan base, of course you're going to upset the fans. You can't blame the fans for everything that goes wrong with it. You just can't. If you and I mean you certainly can if you've been watching a lot of things. A lot of people blame the fans for something going wrong when it might not have been the fans at all. It might have been direction. It might have been storyline. We'll talk more about some of those here in a minute, but that's just some of the things that was brought up tonight. And I appreciate everybody that answered the question. All of them were good, and all of them were valid points. In the grand scheme of things, everything was valid, and I thought it was a great topic to talk about because we got to talk about it in school, like I said. And for the most part, I think all of us agreed that because we are fans and majority of us are readers. But I know there's some people out there that don't read the books and go see the movies. We can take the MCU. We can use comic books for an example. A lot of people don't read the comics, but they love the MCU and they love everything that goes on in there. And that's great. And it's probably why we've had the MCU around for so long, is because it picked up a lot more fans to continue to grow. But that doesn't negate the feelings or the comments and opinions of what some of the fans have. A lot of the fans have valid arguments to why they don't like something. Now, if you go out there and just say it stunk because it stunk, and you start using expletive words, and you don't give a valid argument, then I don't find that opinion worth 2 cents anyways. It's not a good opinion. But if you bring good opinions, like you didn't like the writing style, I mean, it's all subjective anyways, right? For the most part, art and everything is subjective. What you may like, I may not like, and what I like, I guarantee you, 90% of the people don't like what I like anyways. If you look behind me, a lot of people give me guff about what I collect. That's okay. I understand it. It's not for everybody. Um, but that being said, if you like, a lot of people just like movies, and a lot of people just like to read and watch movies, and I totally get that as well. So, um, but these are just my opinion. Again, I'm not trying to force anyone to change their opinion about any of these movies or shows. If you like them, good. If you don't like them, great. Tell me why you don't like them as well. And again, give me valid reasons why you don't like them. And if you like them, give me some reasons why you do. Maybe I missed something in the viewing. And I'm man enough and grown up enough to say that I probably do miss some things, uh, especially when I've got my mind set on something, and um, I didn't foresee it going that way, and it went another way. But I totally get it. Some other things. This is me. This is a dash thing. Again, I don't like it sometimes when directors put their own vision into it. And what I mean by that is they are disregarding uh, the written text that they already have, and they go off and do something totally different when it would have worked. Now I get it. Don't get me wrong. I know there's some times where what works in the book won't work in the movie, and I totally get that. We talked about that with CGI or special effects. Sometimes they don't work, and the book shows more. Totally get that, and I'm not harping on that a lot. When it comes to movie adaptations, I don't go into detail on if they didn't have a certain effect that was in the book, and it wasn't in the movie, or it was in the movie and it wasn't in the book. I don't bother me unless it's a military and it's the Air Force and it's security police. Then I probably have a problem with how they wear their beret or things like that. But that's a dash problem, not a you guys problem. Um, but that's just some of the stuff. And we'll get to some of the stuff that I dislike. But I would like to hear, just like I posted tonight on Facebook, I'd like to hear some of your thoughts of why you think adaptations are good and why you think adaptations are bad. And you can go check out my other video on YouTube about some of the best book to movie adaptations and movie to TV show adaptations. So we'll get started here real quick. Again, there's not a whole lot of them. This is not my definitive top 10 list. This is just some of the ones I was researching that I knew of that didn't quite translate for me. So we'll bring up the first one here. For me, Queen of the Damned. Interview with a Vampire to me was a good movie. I loved Tom Cruise. I loved Brad Pitt. It was a great movie, and I thought it was fantastic. What they tried to do with Queen of the Damned, they tried to put two books into one in a short amount of time, and it just didn't translate. I didn't mind Aaliyah as the queen vampire. I didn't mind her, and the guy behind her. They recasted Lestat because Tom Cruise didn't either want to come back or was not available, so they recasted him. But overall, the actors are fine. They just tried to cram so much of two books into a 95-minute, I believe it was 95 minutes, wasn't quite 2 hours of a movie, and it just didn't translate well. And so for me, the Vampire Chronicles by Anne Rice are some of the best horror fiction out there. I have read almost every one of the Vampire Chronicles, and Lestat and Louis, and all of them are such great characters, and I think they did a disservice in this movie. My opinion. I know some people that loved it. Up next, we have The Dark Tower. For me, Stephen King movies are hit or miss a lot of times. There's some really good Stephen King movies. There's some really bad Stephen King movies. One of the best adaptations of a movie, in my opinion, is Misery, from James Caan to what I came Kathy Bates. And they did that perfectly. And they only changed one minute little thing in there, and that's how how his feet were damaged. I'm not gonna, if you've never read the book, I don't want to give too much away. It was just how his feet were damaged. But that was a brilliantly done movie, book to movie adaptation. The Dark Tower, for me, this is a, how do I put this? It's almost like a comic book. The Dark Tower series, the Gunslinger series, it's almost like a comic book. You're either a fan of it or you aren't. And what they did here is they watered it down way too much. I loved Idris Elba. I loved the actors, but they watered it down so much to try to make the entire audience happy. Excuse me, the audience happy, and it just didn't work in this instance. The Dark Tower would work beautifully if they did it like a TV show, and they followed, they followed the script and they followed the written text by Stephen King. I think The Dark Tower would be a fantastic series. The Gunslinger would be a fantastic series. That's why I think lately, and there's been some bad TV shows, but there's been really good book to TV show adaptations that I've enjoyed. Like I said, we talked about Reacher, we talked about Bosch, we talked about Tracker, fantastic. Terminal List, fantastic. All those are really great shows because you can take the book and turn the entire book into a series, and it works better. Sometimes it doesn't, and we'll talk about a few of them here in a minute. But with like I said, I think this has more of a following, like a cult following, if you will. When we talk about Stephen King, most people say Cujo, The Shining, Firestarter, movies and books like that, but they hardly ever talk about The Dark Tower. And I think that's because, again, this is kind of at least in my opinion, I could be wrong, but I think in my opinion, it's more of a cult following, that people like the books, and it just doesn't match up because you can't try to put everything into one movie. But again, I could be wrong. If you like this movie, great. Again, I love Idris Elba. I thought he was perfect. McConaughey, he's all right. But it just didn't work as a movie for me. And we talked about comic books, and here's an instance where you can have fantastic cast in both movies. Both of these are based off the Dark Phoenix saga of X-Men Marvel Comics. If you haven't read that, I highly suggest it. Now, again, I know certain things couldn't happen due to ownership of certain characters. Totally get that. I totally take that into consideration. But they still could have put a great movie together without those characters. You just put it into the other X-Men, or because they couldn't have any of the other Marvel superheroes in there. But 2 times they tried, and in my opinion, 2 times they failed to bring us the Phoenix Saga, because they didn't stick to how Jean got the Phoenix force in the first place, with the original X-Men that we saw from 1999, 2000. All those, the first X-Men with Hugh Jackman and Famke Janssen, it didn't match the original story, and it just didn't work for even that timeline of X-Men, in my opinion. And then you have the new versions, the X-Men First Class, that had Apocalypse and Days of Future Past. I love Apocalypse. People are going to laugh at me and boo me out of my chair here, because I did like Apocalypse. I know that a lot of people had a problem with the way Apocalypse looked. I thought it was a really good movie, and I thought Days of Future Past was really good translated, even though they didn't have some of the characters that they could have used. It still translated well, in my opinion. But this one, I think they got it wrong Again, I'm not trying to spoil too much. If you haven't read the comics, I highly suggest go out there and get the Phoenix Saga. You can find it on Amazon in graphic novel form, and you can read the whole thing. It's fantastic. And my wife Lorena loves uh, Jean Grey, and she loves the Phoenix Saga, and she was not too thrilled with the either one of them either. So, um, is it a case of me being uh, putting the blinders on because of that? It could be. I don't know, but I just know that they didn't handle the story right, and that was my biggest problem with the Phoenix Saga, a Dark Phoenix Saga. Um, we have the Divergent series, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Orderlies from the City of Bones. Again, trying to emulate the Hunger Games, and it just doesn't work. You know, if you've seen, and this is again, this is a dash opinion. Doesn't reflect anybody else out there. If you liked them, great. If you didn't, sometimes the teen hero trope can get way overplayed sometimes. The Divergent, the entire thing just didn't, to me, was just not a good follow through. And they tried so much to be Hunger Games. Even the books, I have read the books. I worked in a bookstore, and when the kids would come in, they want them, and then they bring them back, and they're like, ah. And no, I didn't like it. Percy Jackson Olympians is doing really well. I think the Disney Plus show is much better than the movies. And so if you like Percy Jackson, go watch the Disney Plus show. I think it's better in certain instances. They do take a lot of liberties in the TV show that weren't, in my opinion, in the book, as well as that wasn't in the original movie. So the problem I have a lot with young adult fiction nowadays is these kids have no flaws. They know everything, they can do everything, and they don't have any flaws, and that's been my problem. I like the movie Percy. I shouldn't say it's worst, bad. I like the original movie here, but it could have been better. It could have stuck a little bit better to the book, in my opinion, and I think it was too short. And then it did, but it didn't get enough love in the theaters to continue on. The same with some of these other ones that we talked about. Sometimes it just doesn't get any love from the audience. We'll talk about some of these right here. She-Hulk didn't get any love from the fans. And Wheel of Time and Rings of Power and Tom Swift. This is where sometimes I talk about where the directors, and this is my opinion. Again, you feel free to disagree, and if you like it, great. I don't want to take that away from you. This is why I don't like it, and why I'm trying to tell you why I don't like it. To me, this is where the director is putting too much of themselves into the shows and not what came out of the books. She-Hulk tried to stick it to the fans. That was the entire. You can go look at any interview with the director and the cast. They were just trying to stick it to the fans. And again, like I said, if you upset your fan base, they're going to move away. Wheel of Time. You've got Robert Jordan created one of the greatest novel series of all time. Brandon Sanderson picked it up after Robert Jordan died, and they've changed it too much. They're focusing on, and again, I'm going to get called a misogynist, or I'm going to get called a hater, or whatever the case may be. They're trying to focus too much on the women of the show and not the entirety of the cast. Because if you read the books, everybody gets fair play, everybody gets fair time, everybody gets screen time, or I say gets page time, I should say. That's why Game of Thrones worked. That's why House of Dragon works. We have two, Wheel of Time and Rings of Power. We have two fantasies novels and that are based off of books, and they're going away from what's in the books and they're getting panned for it. Whereas if you go watch House of Dragon, you watch Game of Thrones, you still have the freedom to do some certain things, and it still turns out to be a great show. Now, I'm probably in the minority with season 8 of Game of Thrones. I loved it. I knew from the beginning, or I had a pretty good idea from the beginning. I think a lot of people wanted Khaleesi to gain the throne. She never was. It's always been about how the Targaryens were bad and how they were not good for the kingdom. It's always been about that. It's always been a Stark story. Literally, the very first line or very first chapter in Game of Thrones is Bran. So, and I kind of figured if it opens up with Bran, it's going to end with Bran. That's my opinion. You can disagree if you want, but that's why it still worked. With the Rings of Power, Tolkien gave them everything. And they're trying to name certain people that were never named. And they're trying to make Sauron and Galadriel so far out of character. It's not even funny. Galadriel, love her character in Lord of the Rings, but never ever in any written storyline was Galadriel a warrior like she is in the Rings of Power. Now, I personally liked the first season, but the second season just went downhill. Because again, they changed Galadriel, they changed Sauron, and how he meets Celebrimbor, and how they build the rings. They changed it all, and I just didn't like it. And so that's my opinion. If you liked it, great. Continue to watch it. I hope it continues. Me personally, I never want anything to be canceled. If that changes your mind, I never want anything to be canceled because I know there are people that love these shows, and I know there's people that want to watch these shows. Tom Swift didn't even follow Tom Swift. If you remember the old Hardy Boys and the old Nancy Drews, the little chapter books, the teen chapter books, Tom Swift was another one, and it just didn't fit today's mold, and it got canceled. I think before the entire season ended, nobody was watching it. So these are because it didn't fit what the stories were about. And Tom Swift was on CW, and I'm not a big CW fan. They kind of destroy everything they touch anyways lately. But that's just me. That's my opinion. And last but not least, here's another one that great actors where they didn't follow the storyline. I'm not an Acolyte fan. I've had several shows on this where I disagreed with some of the way the Acolyte went. And let's look at, and it was based on the Star Wars High Republic. Here's where they deviated, in my opinion. They deviated. Here we see Light of the Jedi. You see the cover. It's all about the Jedi. And they deviated from that in the Acolyte to make the Jedi the bad guys. At no time ever in Star Wars have we ever looked at the Jedi as the bad guy. Did they do some things wrong? Absolutely. Totally get it. They've done some things wrong. That's why they met their end, in my opinion, in Revenge of the Sith, because they did lose their way. But at no time do I think they were ever the bad guys. And I feel like the Acolyte, Ken, Dash's opinion, you can disagree all you want, and I'm okay with that if you disagree with that. But the Acolyte tried to portray the Jedi as the bad guys, and it didn't work. It just doesn't work. And that's where you're going to upset the fans. The fans are passionate about the Jedi. This was advertised to me as a murder mystery, and we knew who the murderer, and the mystery was solved in 5 minutes of the first episode. And it lost everything that it garnered. It didn't work. So if you're going to do that, if you're going to change things, don't change it for the sake of changing. I talked with Amber about that the other day. She and I had to talk about that. If you're going to make changes, don't make changes for the sake of making changes. Make changes that stick for the most part, but make sure the changes are because it won't work. It won't transcribe from text to screen. Don't just go making changes because you didn't like the book and now you want to remake the whole thing. If you're going to do that, go start your own IP. Go start your own property. Go start your own book. Go start your own comic books or whatever. That's my opinion. I think sometimes that ruins um, the books for me or the movies for me. That's what ruins. It's when you make changes just to make changes because you can. We talked about it. Peter Jackson did a great job. He took some things out, but he stayed true, and he didn't change Gandalf's characterization. He didn't change Frodo's characterization. He didn't change Legolas's characterization. You can change, and I know what adaptation means. I know exactly what adaptation means. That doesn't mean change the entire thing. Because to me, that is
Yeah. Weird. Yeah. Weird.
So I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Again, if there's anything that you agreed with, let me know. If there's anything you disagreed with, let me know. If you're not already, please this will be uploaded onto my YouTube tomorrow. So if you haven't already, go sign up for YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube, hit that like, subscribe button, share, so it gets put into the algorithm. I appreciate all that. If you like the show tonight, give us a star. Again, it helps my family. I'm doing this for fun, and I'm doing this for me. But the stars help my family. Helps me to continue doing what I'm doing. So I appreciate you guys. I love books. I love movies. Again, if you follow me on any of my social media, that's all I talk about. And so sometimes I'm pleased, sometimes I'm not. Again, I'm not trying to force anyone's hand to change their mind. If you like a certain show that I dislike, great. If you like a certain show I dislike, or I like, I like and you dislike, great. It's all gravy. But I appreciate you coming out. Have a good night. And we'll see you on the next Dash at Night. Take care. Love you guys and have a good night.